we were in this old dilapidated building. And, this team had developed this culture under my previous leadership. It's us against the world, and we can get through everything. And so there was this old building is not a problem. And then we had an issue where we actually had a storm in which part of the building actually came down. And we ended up, so the people sent out, my facilities people sent out a note saying, "Hey, this is happening. Just be aware of it." And for the next 2 hours, this stream of responses to this email came out about all these examples of other things, like the bat in the on the third floor. And I looked at this and I said, this whole ethos about us against the world, this building is an issue for these people, and I didn't know about it because I had really not had not listened to. I just the most vocal people were like, "Hey, we can handle anything." And at that point, I actually went to my boss and said, "Hey, I need to spend some money to move us out of this building." And he's like, "You're absolutely right. That place is a death trap. We need to get people out of it." And so, he was also a good listener, right? But there's an example of you can't communicate by just one means. You've got to use every form of communication, and you have to provide venues for people to listen, for you to be able to listen to what people are saying. You're not always going to make everybody happy. That's for sure. But that, I think, in my mind, is the thing you have to do is have your pulse on the organization. Do the surveys. You'd be surprised at how often people are amazed at what they find out in these surveys that are issues that they never even realized. But that gets back to building a structure where there's trust there. If people don't trust that you're going to act on something, or they're suspicious that you're going to penalize them if they speak up about something that's an issue. So that open communication and that trust are the two keys in my mind from that perspective.
I don't know that you got communicate, communicate, communicate from who I'm about to reference, but I have to believe that you all overlapped some in your career. But when I interviewed General Les Lyles
Oh yeah,
for my study, I asked him, "What are the 3 most important leadership lessons you learned throughout your career?" And he said, "Communicate, communicate, communicate." So anyway,
yeah. Les is a good friend and a mentor for many many years. Great guy,
he's a
great American.
spectacular person. I really appreciate him greatly. So those are 2 really great, concepts, trust and communication. As I thought about our conversation, when it was coming up, I was trying to come up with how would I go about doing this in a practical way that people can understand. I came up with 3 questions that I think can help us know how to better care for the people we're leading. And so number 1 is to ask, "Do you have what you need to perform at your best?" And then listen to the answer. Number 2 is, "What's getting in your way of performing at your best?" And then the third one that I came up with is, "What is one thing I can do to make your job easier?" The caveat here, and we've said this on this podcast before, is if you ask and they tell you something, A, you gotta listen. You gotta actually care about the answer, but then you have to be willing to act on it.
Those questions are good, but one of the things that I experienced, it gets back to that competence. That one is the next thing is to really get to understand what is it that you're trying to do. You know, do you have what you need to perform at your best? Well, what is it you're trying to do? And because it may be that there's competence elsewhere in the team that can help them to do that job easier and more effectively, but they haven't had the opportunity to get exposed to it. So I'll give you, a very specific example. Very sad start to this was, I know if you remember a few years ago, we had a former airman that had gone to create some very serious, several deaths in a church in Texas. And in the process of investigating this incident, they found that the airman had had a reportable violent crime, and the Air Force had failed to submit it into the national database, and he was then able to get a weapon when he should not have been able to get the weapon. And we discovered when we did this that we probably had maybe several more of these type of incidents. We didn't know. We had all paperwork for all of these convictions from around the Air Force, but we didn't. And so we had to go figure out how we were going to. We were tasked as well as the other services to go back and check to see if we missed anybody else. And so the security forces was off center was part of Air Force Materiel Command. And so they came to me and they said, "Okay, here's our plan for doing this. We're going to take 10 of our senior NCOs in the Air Force and send them down there to sift through this paperwork in tranches of 6 weeks. And we're going to get this done in about a year and a half." It's the typical brute force way. We're going to take the tools we have, and the best tool we have is really smart NCOs who, can get through this quickly. And just a couple of hours before that, I'd gotten a presentation from what was our now called the Rapid Sustainment Office, which was trying to look at using tools to improve the speed and the cost of fixing airplanes. And they had showed me that they had contract with this company for what we would now call an AI tool to take unstructured data, meaning just data that was basically scans PDF files, and go through it and be able to use that to look for trends in what was breaking on our airplanes. And all the data that we had was paper again, that from the maintenance one. So I listened to him and I said, okay, so what are you trying to do? We're trying to figure out, we're trying to identify in all these pieces of paper whether we've missed this. And I said, so it's a couple of key words that you're looking for, right? He goes, yeah, that's what they're going to look for. And so I then said, okay, hold on. And I called up the lady that had come in and I said, look, do you got any room on your contract? I mean, because I think I've got another. And we sent them down there, and they took about a week because they had to scan in all this paper, and then they had to train, just as we talk
Mhm.
about AI, they had to train the tool, and we got through all the data in 2 weeks. And so there's an example, this first of all, they were skeptical about this. "Oh, well, yeah, is this really gonna work?" And then as I got into it, and now that is a tool that they have to do other things. And so there's an example where by listening, and my job as a leader is to make those connections, to leverage the competence that I have somewhere else to do that. And that was all because I'm like, oh, yes, I wanted to get the job done, but to think that we were going to send these guys down there to sit there for, 8 to 10 hours a day just going through paper. Can't we do this in an easier way and still leverage their expertise because they were part of training the tool, right? They had to
Sure.
be there to train the tool. So there's an example in my mind that I probably would add a fourth question onto there is what is it you're really trying to do? And do I potentially have expertise, competence elsewhere that can enable you to do that easier?